Harvard Divinity School.
Uses and abuses of power in alternative spiritualities. Implications for spiritual care of patients and communities. April 27th, 2023.
So thank you everyone for this opportunity to talk about the use of faith power in Sharia economic movement. The idea is that since my background is basically from business education, management, but recently we had moved into an industry and an area where we can see a more visible use of faith power. So I'll be presenting Sharia economic movement as a case for a broader religion-centric economic movement. So a brief about the Sharia economic movement. So I'll be citing these books, and recently this publication took more sort of capability-centric view of the use of faith in power. But basically I'm presenting from Pakistan. It's north of Pakistan, so it's evening here. So some financial geography would come into the discussion, which may frame the very logic and conceptualization of faith power into the context. So broadly, I say, and I've been hearing to the speakers talking about the use of religiosity, divinity, and empowerment of capital through it. But one of the observations I have seen in my experience with the Sharia economic movement is the religious embodiment creating diverse power centers. So let me define take my assumptions. And I took the perspective as religious embodiment refers to the idea that religious beliefs and practices are not just intellectual and abstract concepts, but are more experienced and expressed through physical body. So I'll take more sort of experiential, phenomenological perspective of how the religious embodiment has been achieved in the Sharia economic movement. There are two ways to talk about it. One is more taking Sharia economic movement as a historical religion. The other is the reemergence of it in the post-1940 narrative of it, when it was brought back into the politics in an economics of different regions. So my focus in this paper is on three regions. One is the Middle East, the other is subcontinent Asia, India and Pakistan, the other is Turkey. So these three different embodiment of religiosity had happened, and I'll story out later on in this. So broadly, some instances we can see in the economic movement, when it started in 1940s, re-emerged as a new phenomena, explicitly termed as an Islamic economics or Sharia economics. So as a case, when it has capitalized, some different sectors has emerged. For example, this Islamic finance has emerged, so I took some of these numbers to just showcase the overall structure of this movement. So then the halal food industry has emerged. In the finance movement, the main focus is on the banking side of it. That's the biggest part of it. But some mutual funds with a title as of Sharia mutual funds, capital markets. So all these have achieved a certain size globally in different regions. Similarly, another part of religiosity have been embodied into the food sector, where explicit sentiments are associated with the very production as well as consumption of the food have been branded and put forward to the industry and achieved that size as well. Similarly, go to the fashion side of it, pharmaceuticals and cosmetics, and also some travel and tourism have been branded down into the where the religiosity have been embodied in it as well, and also in media. So having in mind these instances, we go to the basic, like what are the norms that have been incorporated into this new and re-emergent and explicitly named Sharia economic and finance movement. The first one is a riba, so a historical narrative and reinterpretation of the riba, which is which include and the contemporary notion of interest, both commercial and consumer interest, have been classified and reinterpreted as if that is more and again relevant. So the banking sector, for example, and financial institutions have been pushed forward to bring new models and new contracts in different regions. So for example, in the Middle Eastern banking and financial industry, more trade-based historical trade contracts were brought forward to the banking sectors and re-implemented. In subcontinents taken from Ottoman Empire, more sort of endowment-based contracts were brought forward and implemented into the financial sectors. So apart from that, more real assets are brought into the financial system as well, where the focus was and is to definancialize the banking and financial industry and the economic movement as a whole. So more financial institutions can be seen having more tangible assets, not just financializations of the assets, incorporating this principle. Similarly, the principles derived from the Islamic jurisprudence broadly and from other religions as well was also informing to hit the very uncertainty and excessive uncertainty and speculations have been targeted to reduce that to certain levels. Because the assumption is that if certain level of uncertainty is recommended because of to take certain risk in the businesses and the economic activities, but it also puts some constraints on this uncertainty and excessive uncertainty, and similarly some certain halal and compliant in a form like various consumables and other usable commodities were considered as if they are allowed and other are not. Similarly, some substance-oriented commodification had happened as well. From these and other principles, the argument I raise is leading to some diverse power centers into these industries and business organizations because of using the religiosity in it. So the power structures is achieving a dichotomy in the economic pluralism is emerging. So I had these 5 assumptions that perhaps that they are pushing this dichotomy in the power structures in these economic movements. The first is the business principles, the economic principles historically established and developed has came into the business and are now reinterpreted with the reinterpretation and re-emergence of the Sharia economics. So a lot of discussions on the very faith is now happening in these institutions, like in different regions, and different constitutions and political structures are allowing the same to happen. So what I can see in the structures, particularly underlying the Sharia economic movements, those institutions underlying the Sharia economic movements are referring to the notion of monotheism, the belief in angels, like all inscriptions from multiple books, from Quran, Bible, and others. Quotations from prophethoods have been displayed in these organizations and commodified. Similarly, various kinds of usages have been recommended and constraints have been put in place using the notion of the fear of hereafter in this commodification. And similarly, many happenings have been assigned to this time, that as if that was already decided. So the more rationality-oriented culture of corporate and business can be seen turning to more a faith-centric orientation to the unification of the economic movement. So with this in the context, I would get more focus on the very power source, know that it is this Sharia economic movement is gaining in terms of getting size as well as expansion in multiple directions. First of all, the expansion side of it is it's expanding more into regions, like different regions. Like in the United States, we have the Lariba banks and other banks, and in subcontinent, various financial institutions have emerged as well. So I'll be more focused on how this consumer power had been achieved through those religiosity, pushing forward in a new culture of the Sharia economic movement. So I equate an regime as if the value that is now the Sharia economic movement is pushing forward is equivalent to the power-oriented value, and the consumption of the same is broadening this discipline and practice. So economic service emerging from the Islamic economic movement is now recently been defined as if it is the creating a value, but that value is different. It's not pushing forward by the capital a lot, but it's a feeling of being benefited through the capability of various capabilities that these Sharia economic movements are offering. So there are obviously the capabilities of the businesses, capabilities of the institutions and management, but now the new capabilities are reinterpreted capabilities of religion are pushing unique propositions, empowering religiosity centers as well as empowering the economic centers, creating that dichotomy in the business and economic environments. So the fifth assumption that I had is the Sharia economic movement is then can be seen as the application of those Sharia capabilities to serve wealth production, distribution, exchange, and consumption. This assumption is quite opposite of one of the other assumptions that also prevail in the studies, is that as if the commodification of the Sharia capabilities is happening as a proposition. So a more capital empowerment is happening utilizing religiosity as a component of it. But this perspective would put in as if the religious capabilities are pushing forward and utilizing the production, distribution, and exchange and consumption function of the economic movements. So the power centers, know how the powers emerge and from where they are emerging this Sharia economic movement. Currently, the services titled as religious, financial, and economic service are Islamic financial service, in this case in particular. So one of the components through which this service is governed is the Sharia contracts. So contracts are utilized as modules to which a discipline be established in the way the service is produced and the way the service is consumed. So it's then the financial centers, the economic centers are pushing the very objectives of the religion, the maqasid, as well as the rulings of the Sharia. So if you look to all the contracts, there are very popular contracts have been utilized. Like, for example, in these contracts, we had, for example, the partnerships. So various kinds of partnerships are used, various kinds of sales, which are very specified as kind called baya or buyu, and also some of the specialized kinds of endowments are used, which they call waqf. So okaf are utilized, particularly in the era where historically the religion was more popular as emperor. But sales contracts are more popular, partnerships are more popular contracts, giving power to these economic movements where more trade-oriented economies are open economies are working. So the second component, which are becoming part of this economic movement, is the wealth in itself. So many structures in the wealth part of it is when conventional business models are adopted. So this dichotomy then leads to some of the in the moment you can see groups of people where Sharia contracts are utilized to enhance and empower the capital part of the institutions and the movement. On others, you can see various kinds of capitals are utilized to advance the objectives of the Sharia. But the notion, and from the consumer point of view, the way the experience is emerging to be important component and a source of empowerment. So to frame it work, like how this works, how this dichotomy and power relationship works nowadays. So the broader Sharia contracts are push power into the economic movement through rulings, through interpretations. So 5 rulings were straightforward interpreted as if they are mandatory to follow, like, for example, prohibition of the interest, interpreted and equated as usury. Similarly, many recommendations have been put forward as if they are followed would be considered good in it. A lot of spectrum of movements were considered as allowed. There are certain spectrum of activities considered as disliked and prohibited. Apart from that, the rules embodiment into the movement are also being pushed through the objectives of it, like, for example, the protection of faith, the protection of life and intellect, family, and property. So from one side, the broader objectives are given to embody Sharia into the economic movement, and also embody economic into the Sharia's power centers. And also rulings were recommended so that procedures are informed. So finally, just to bring forward how the power is achieved in the experience part of the Sharia economic movement. I have perceived and noticed various kinds of capabilities are then developed. Like, for example, various kinds of Sharia boards and advisory councils are developed. So they look after it as if the economic movement and their services are according to the faith or not. Similarly, during the implementation of various transactions in various sectors, the monitoring and audit teams are established so that if they are able to demonstrate if compliance is there. Similarly, new kind of structures are developed based on waqf, tradings, partnerships, and endowments and charities. In order to cope up and coming up with a new sectors, various kinds of instruments, jurisprudence instruments like qiyas and ijma, like opinion making and interpretations, have been utilized to develop and interpret Sharia for the new financial services. So because of all this movement, there comes some abuses and uses of it. Like the first and predominant is the identity uses. So because of using the term Sharia, it had been causing a lot of inclusion and exclusion. Like, for example, people from various faith centers may not be part of it if a certain religion is branded in it. Similarly, a certain kind of inclusion have been achieved when more faithful to Sharia consumers and stakeholders were out of the industry and economic movements will become part of it. I can also note that because of this identity, underpricing and overpricing of the service had happened as well. And some charities had happened, have been imposed as well because of the violation of it, of the rules in all those audits and compliance processes. Similarly, the tangibility uses has happened as well. I point these terms that because of the performance and the interpretation of interest being prohibited, certain the economic movement moved more towards the tangible and real sectors. So certain non-tangible sector being excluded from it, and it has some of the benefit have been observed in some of the financial crises, like low financial balloons, risk to the crisis. But on the other hand, some observation have been made that certain sectors were excluded. So definancialization had happened, and also some unification and reduced competition and diversity have been reduced in the market. And finally, since the uncertainty and the risks have been avoided, so we can see a little the speed of innovations and adoption and adaptation to the new sector have been reduced as well. Because of but recently more the disclosure side of it has been emerged, and which has actually then increased and have made the services more inefficient. But I have been exploring this discipline and try to understand that. And thank you so much for your time. I hope that makes sense to all of us. Thank you so much.
Sponsored by the Program for the Evolution of Spirituality.
Copyright 2023, the President and Fellows of Harvard College.